Short exercise 20-6, equivalent units of production. Clearwater produces premium bottled water. Clearwater purchases artesian water, so not free, stores the water in large tanks, and then runs the water through two processes, filtration and bottling. At Clearwater, water is added at the beginning of the filtration process. Conversion costs are added evenly throughout the process. During February, the filtration process incurred the following costs in processing 150,000 liters. So we can view the cost here. So now assume that in February, 130,000 liters were completed and transferred out of the filtration department and into the bottling department. There's some additional information here. It says the 20,000 liters remaining in the filtration ending work in process inventory were 80% of the way through the filtration process. Clearwater has no beginning inventories. So then our job is to compute the equivalent units of production for direct materials and conversion costs for the filtration department. So let's reopen that additional information and review here. So down here on the right, I've shown us our process. Here is the beginning of the process. Here is the end of the process. So in this case, the process is the water being filtered. So DM stands for direct materials in this case, and it's the artesian water. So the artesian water is added at the beginning of the process, and then the filtering begins. And then conversion costs, on the other hand, are added evenly through the process. So that's what this is all talking about here in the information about the conversion costs are added evenly through the process. So our conversion costs consist of our direct labor, so that's the wages of the people working in the filtration department, and the manufacturing overhead, which would be things like depreciation on the filtration equipment and maintenance on the filtration equipment. So those costs are added evenly throughout the process. So let's go to my slide showing the T account. So over here it says during February, the filtration process incurred the following costs in processing the 150,000 units. So we know that we process this total 150,000 units. And then some of them were finished and some of them were unfinished, and therefore are still in the department at the end of the period. So it says 130,000 liters were completed and transferred out. So that's what I'm showing here, completed and transferred out for that 130,000. So if we process 150,000 and transfer out 130,000 units, that means we have 20,000 units incomplete. So that's 20,000 liters remaining in the WIP, in the work in process inventory for filtration. So we can actually do the physical units right here to start. So the set of columns, the amount of units completed, transferred out was the 130,000 given to us up above right here. So that's 130,000 liters transferred out. We know our ending work in process is going to be that 20,000 liters given to us in the additional information. So try to pop that open, that's taking a second. And then the total units accounted for, again, given to us here for that 150 liters, 150,000 liters. So that 20,000 liters remaining in the filtration's ending work in process inventory were 80% of the way through the filtration process. So let me go back and switch back to our other slide. So what this is talking about, conversion costs are added evenly through the process. So at the end of February, 20,000 units were still in the department that are still being filtered. They're incomplete, but they are 80% complete for conversion costs. But these direct materials were added at the beginning of the process. And then finally, we also had this additional information with the cost. So if we were doing the whole production cost report here, so here is a production cost report, below that is just partial. But if we were doing the whole thing, we would later need the dollar amounts, but we're only doing this partial, so we only are doing the equivalent units part of it. So we don't need the dollar costs in this table. So now let's talk about the direct materials. So we had to figure out how many units have had the direct materials added to them. So let's just start with completed and transferred out, this portion here. So all of the units that were completed and transferred out are 100% done. Then therefore all of them have had the direct materials and all of them have had the conversion cost, which is direct labor and manufacturing overhead costs added to them. And again, since these have been completed and transferred out, that means all of these direct materials have been used, and then all of the conversion costs here are applied. So now let's talk about the ending work in process. So these are the 20,000 liters or units, whatever you want to call them, that are still unfinished and not completely filtered. So for the direct materials, as soon as we start the process of filtration, we add the direct materials, which is the water. So 100% of this 20,000 will be going into direct materials. So we're taking this 20,000 at 100% and putting it here for direct material. Now let's talk about conversion costs. So in this additional information, they told us essentially that the conversion costs were 80% of the way through the filtration process. So since these 20,000 units are 80% of the way done, that means 80% of the conversion costs are added to them. So the equivalent units of production, it's the same thing as having that we're going to take that 20,000 times 0.8. So let's go ahead and open a calculator. So that's going to be that 20,000 times 80%. And that's going to give us 16,000 liters there for the conversion costs that are part of this ending work in process. So it's again the same as saying 16,000 complete liters had conversion costs added to them. So we can close this out and add these through. So total units accounted for direct materials is again 150,000 liters. And for conversion costs, it's going to be the 130,000 plus the 16,000. And that is going to give us 146,000 total units accounted for the conversion costs. So the tricky part about this is the 16,000 units means that of the 20,000 units that are partially complete, it's equivalent of having 16,000 units of the conversion costs added to them. So let's go ahead and check our answer. Excellent.